this episode of Let's Talk, Let's Think. I'm your host, Carrie Braggs, and if you are a first-time viewer today, we thank you for joining us, and we just hope that you continue to come back, that you may become a part of the family here. And so on today's episode, I'm going to follow up on part one to this series where I talked about understanding the culture that right now, that those on the other side of the aisle, as they trying to come together with the black community, that they have to understand the culture, that this is a culture thing. And I feel that for us to be able to truly move forward, that everyone else needs to understand our culture for them to be able to understand how to come alongside us and help and move things in a positive direction. And so today I'm dealing with part two, which is we need people to listen, learn, and lead by following. And so number one is, we in the black community, we talk about racism all the time. This is nothing new in our community. We talk about dealing with racism in all areas of life on a regular basis. And so we know that these things exist. And so most of the time, people weren't listening. You know, people come up with excuses, they come up with statistics and all these different things to just kind of, kind of be like, nah, racism doesn't exist anymore, but we're living it daily. And so, you know, when you're hearing people tell you these things all the time, then we need you to listen, because we're not trying to get you to take sides. We're just trying to share our experiences with you. We're trying to share our experiences. We're trying to let you know how we're hurting. And so, I mean, you just think about that in different other areas. You don't necessarily deal with these things. I mean, if someone is sitting up telling you how they've been raped or something like that, you don't sit there and start saying things like, maybe you were dressing too provocatively, so maybe that's what's going on. So I don't think people are just going out of their way to rape people. You know, we need to have some sensitivity and compassion within these situations. You should ask yourself, you know, why would so many people in the black community just lie? Why would we just lie about these things? And so we're asking you to have an open heart to listen as we attempt to share these things with you. And so we go from listening to learning. So when you look at racism and all its ugliness across the board, I mean, when you look through the history of America, if you look at it, you know, when some people, they're kind of like, hey, racism doesn't exist anymore. But if you look at the history of America, it just changes how it's presented. You know, years ago, it used to be where they had a sign up that said, no blacks allowed, whites only, colored bathrooms and all that. So at least they had signs up to let you know when you're walking up, hey, you are not welcome here. But then they said, no, you can't do that. So they took the signs down. But now, instead of the signs being up saying you can't come in, when you come in, they treat you a certain kind of way. And so it just changes. I mean, you know, we can sit up and talk about redlining and all the things that went on where they put, you know, the black community in certain places, the gaps with the wealth being spread out with the school districts and all of these other things. I mean, it's embedded in American history. And so you have to be able to sit back and learn. When we talk about being racially profiled by the police, for most people, when we deal with specifically being profiled by the police, most people will always say things like, well, you should just comply. And my response to that is, if I'm being racially profiled and pulled over, that means to begin with that the officer is already doing something wrong to me, infringing on my rights. So therefore, why should I be complying with someone who is doing something wrong as compared to me if I'm pulled over when I know I'm being racially profiled, and I ask, excuse me, officer, can you tell me why I'm being pulled over? That's nothing is wrong with that. I believe anybody else would do the same thing, and they would say, yeah, that's reasonable. If I'm being pulled over and I don't see any reason for it, then I'm going to ask the policeman, why am I being pulled over? And so it's just about a matter of learning and not speaking to the situations when you don't know enough about these things. I always encourage people to go online, because there are just hundreds and hundreds of videos of people filming, situations to where they were racially profiled by the police and they were treated a certain kind of way. There are hundreds of videos where you see interactions with white and black people, to where you have someone calling the police on someone black because they're waiting for a friend outside of a building, or they're walking by and they're saying, hey, they looked at me a certain kind of way and I'm feeling afraid, to where even though you may not act that way or condone those behaviors, at least you can see that these things are real. You can learn by doing your homework. So don't take my word for it. Don't take other people's words for it, because sometimes there are things that may be going on that we don't see. But then when somebody points them out, then I encourage you to be willing to say, I don't see this, or I don't think this. Let me check it out and see. And then you pay attention to some of these things, to where you'll find out a lot of these things are true and what's really going on, to where you can say, wow, that's not right. That's not right. How can I help? And so I just encourage you to learn. And so the third one is, I encourage you to lead by following. To lead by following. So when you look at these things, I look at going into someone else's community. So many years ago, I interned with a church. And one of the pastors, he told me about his story. He told me about how he lived in North County, and he had a heart to do work in the city to help in different city areas and everything. And so he said that God put it on his heart to show that if he was going to help the community, that he needed to be a part of the community. And so therefore he moved into that community, and he became a part of them. So now he is amongst them. It's not somebody just coming out from the outside looking in, or coming in and just saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do to help and all this. No, he became one of them, so they would know that he was invested in the community. And so we need other people to lead by following, meaning that when I was interning down at the church, I was down there for maybe about a year interning. And so the thing of it was, this was their community. I followed his example. I followed, and where he led me, that's where I went and helped. I didn't just jump out there to try to do things on my own. I followed him because why? He was a part of the community. He was a trusted voice in the community. So me going through him, then that meant the community trusted me based on him, because they didn't know me, but they knew that a member of their community was vouching for me, and he was showing me what the community was in need of. So he was telling me what the youth needed, because most of it was primarily me working with the youth. And so he told me what some of their needs were, and we came together and put something together for me to move forth with the youth. So, I mean, I saw things that could have helped in the community, but I didn't just go down there and just start doing things. What I did was I talked to the pastor, and there were things where I'm like, hey, I see this or I see that. What do you think about that? And he would say, well, I can understand that, but from what I've seen and being a part of this community, this is the thing that I think is the biggest thing that we need to tackle. And this is the best way to tackle it, because he knew the community, he knew the people. And so I didn't go off on my own. I said, okay, if this is how you feel we should go, I'm following you. I'm leading by I'm leading by following, because I'm showing others to say, hey, you want to go in here and actually help, then you need to come in and follow someone that's a part of the community into the community. Because otherwise you may go in there on your own, and you may unintentionally bring harm or cause damage that you didn't want to do. So that's why, if you are connected with leaders in the community or leaders in that church where you want to help serve, then that's what you need to do. You need to lead by following them. You need to go before them and say, hey, I want to help here. So how can I help here? And they will tell you, hey, this is what the community needs. This is what the church needs. And then you come alongside them, and they move you through the community. They move you from place to place to where you are being trusted in their community, because you are with someone from their community, or you are with someone from their church that the people trust. And so, I mean, I think these are a lot of simple things, but I think it's a heart issue. We need to have the heart to say, if I'm going to listen, I'm willing to go all out. Meaning, if I truly want to help within a situation, I don't have a problem listening, I don't have a problem learning, and I don't have an issue with leading by following. I don't have a problem with that. We don't always have to be in charge of things. We have to know when we are supposed to be the leader, when we are supposed to be a soldier. We should have the heart to say, what role do you want me to play? And that should cover it all, because that is the true heart of a Christian, for us to be able to help within these situations. And I think when we look at things in that manner, that we can come together on one accord and really handle things in a great manner while dealing with racial reconciliation. And so that's all I have for this episode of Let's Talk, Let's Think. I'm your host, Carrie Braggs. Thank you for joining me on this episode, and I will see you on part 3 of this video in a few days. You take care. Have a good week.